I'll go ahead and kick it off if everybody's ready. I'd like to call to order the Thursday, February 21st, 2019 Watertown Board of Adjustment meeting. Can I get a roll call?
Stein? Hanson?
Here.
Dargis Johnson? Here. Dolly?
Here.
Culhane?
Here.
Kays?
Here.
Brink?
Here.
Ford and Oletsky are absent. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Jill. First item on the agenda is the approval of the February 7th, 2019 minutes. I need a motion. Motion by Stein, second by Dargis Johnson. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Second item on the agenda is an applicant from the Watertown School District. Jill, if you could walk us through that.
The owner applicant of this request is Watertown School District number 14-4, Lake Area Technical Institute. The property address, the main building is located at 1201 Arrow Avenue. There are plans being prepared as we speak for the construction of a Prairie Lakes Healthcare Center of Learning addition to the LATI building located in the R3 multifamily residential district, for which 25 additional parking spaces are proposed to be located on the boulevard. Application for said parking layout was denied based on the following ordinance regulations. Section 21-7305, Boulevard Public Right-of-Way Landscaping Requirements, states that the entire public right-of-way, excluding the street, in all zoning districts, shall be devoted entirely to grass and approved tree plantings, except for the necessary surfacing of sidewalks and driveways. There shall be a minimum width of 15 feet of grass adjacent to the public street. In the event that there is not 15 feet of public right-of-way to be utilized for the planting of grass, the difference shall be met by requiring the developer owner of the property to provide the balance of the required 15 feet of grass on private property. The necessary surfacing of sidewalks and driveways may be allowed within the minimum width of the 15 feet of grass. Non-living ground cover, including but not limited to rock, stone, brick, concrete, blacktop, or other like materials, shall not cover more than 10% when used as a landscape material in the required 15-foot grassed area adjacent to the public street. 21-7306, compliance, states that properties and rights-of-way in conformance with this ordinance at the date of its adoption shall not be altered in such a manner as to cause non-compliance with this ordinance. The applicant appeals those requirements of the current zoning ordinance. Staff finds that plans are being prepared, again, for the construction of Prairie Lakes Healthcare Center of Learning addition to the LATI building to be located on the northwesterly quadrant of the parcel near the intersection of 3rd Avenue North and 11th Street East, for which 14 parking spaces will be lost due to the addition, and 25 additional parking spaces are being proposed in place of the 234 feet of established grass boulevard. Upon ascertaining that the standards for granting variances are met per 210202 2C 1 through 9, the Board of Adjustment may prescribe appropriate conditions and safeguards in conformity with the ordinance.
Thank you, Joe. I'll go ahead and open the public hearing. If there's anybody here to speak on behalf or against, please approach the microphone.
Good afternoon. My name is Corey Bleinberg. I am with Co-op Architecture out of Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And we are the firm that's handling the design and construction documentation for the addition to Lake Area Tech. As you can see, indicated on the slide up above, outlined in the red, that's where we are proposing the additional parking spaces.
So one of the things that we need to look at here is the aesthetics of the neighborhood, and I think the Lake Area campus does a really good job of maintaining a good aesthetic appearance. Of course, we will be taking away some of the boulevard here, and I think the development's going to affect some of the greenery there. I did note on the plan page that didn't show the parking spaces that there was 4 new trees it looked like were going to be added there. The sheet that had the parking places, I don't see those trees accounted for. Those 4 trees there.
Okay.
Is the intention to include additional trees for
Yeah,
landscaping?
yes. So this plan right here is strictly just indicating the landscape portion of it.
Okay.
Whether or not the parking gets approved or not. So those trees would be included. The intent for the parking is to add additional parking spaces. And if you look at an aerial plan, and we don't need to flip to it, but you'll notice on the opposite side of 11th Street, there is diagonal parking that extends probably even a little bit further to the north than even what we're proposing here. So as far as changing the design and the intent of the road construction, we're really not creating any more of a hindrance or anything like that that's already there. One of the other things that we're trying to accomplish is by doing this, we would also move the sidewalk, which currently is right up against the curb of that street. We'd actually move that back off of the street. A portion of it would run right across the front of the parking spaces for unloading area, but at the same time, it will still continue to go straight until we get closer to the intersection and still be about 20 feet off of the street, which is really nice as far as snow removal and safety of pedestrians walking. And one of the other issues is currently I don't even know if it meets ADA access because there are power poles directly in the center of the sidewalk, which creates a little bit of a problem as well.
Yeah, it does look like on the plan it's ADA compliant across the entire.
Yes, yep.
Mr. Chair, I have a question for staff. Ken, with the existing layout of Lake Area Tech and the existing parking spaces that they have, do they currently meet code for existing parking and existing structures?
They exceed the current requirements
How
by
many,
code.
how many do they currently exceed?
I can't give you the exact number. We did the rough build-up.
More
on
than
it and checked it out.
24?
I'm sure it's more than 24, but in a situation like this, like a lot of businesses, it's not based on what our ordinance says you have to have. It's based on what they need to satisfy their parking requirements.
Right.
That's why ours is a minimum standard, not a maximum standard.
So even with the addition, they would still meet the minimum standard required by code?
Yes, they would.
Next question. In a different section of City Code 190403, it says parallel parking except satisfied areas. It says all vehicles, motor vehicles, and other parking upon the streets of this city shall be parked parallel with the curb of such street except where parking spaces are otherwise marked by the city. Has the city marked any of these spaces for anything other than parallel parking on this stretch of road?
Oh, I don't believe there's even parallel parking allowed along that section.
Thank you. That's where I was going. So my question is, and this is maybe more for a legal interpretation from the city attorney, is if there's a separate section of city ordinances that says that this request isn't even allowed by city ordinance unless it's specified by the city council, how do we as the zoning board interpret that or mold that into this zoning request?
Tell me again the name of the code section.
190403.
While he's looking that up, Corey, I have a question for you. So, Jill, did you say that they're going to lose 14 parking spots and add 25?
That is
For a net
correct.
a
That is
gain of
correct.
11?
Yep.
With respect to this specific proposed addition for the activity, and I understand that, there's parking all over the place there, but for the expected use of that building and the traffic coming in and out, is that going to be sufficient parking, right, for the new addition there, right, where people are going to be parking?
I think it's definitely gonna help. Right now, the addition's being built at the very north end of the existing parking where we are losing 14 spots. So there is some parking right there in front of it. This will help provide some additional parking there. The school does own another parking lot just to the north of this across the street. You can kind of see it right at the top there. But And it does get used, but it's just a little further distance from the school, and they have to cross the street. And once again, that sidewalk in its current condition doesn't provide very good access to the building, especially during winter conditions. So having that parking would be very beneficial to Lake Area Tech.
Have you thought about using a design where the parking is closer to the building itself as opposed to putting it right on the street, which only has a 66-foot right-of-way? I mean, aesthetically, it maybe isn't as nice as what you're thinking, but it would be functional.
For the most part, we're landlocked. With the addition, there isn't enough room to get any parking in between the street and the new addition.
What's the distance between the edge of the proposed addition and the edge of the current parking, the eastern side?
Let me check that now.
I'm having a hard time reading
Yeah.
it.
56 feet, 5 inches.
So if we were to go 56 feet and a 22-foot car with a 12 to 18-foot turning range, you could put the parking up adjacent to the building and still meet code.
Not without, I mean,
It would meet code, though.
if you guys allow some of that parking to take place in the setback.
Right.
The other issue is the grades that occur there. So if you were to get a parking lot that meets the required slope requirements, the finished grades would be probably about 5 feet below finished floor of the building.
Okay.
So it would increase building costs, and it wouldn't look as nice not having green space in between that parking lot and the building. The other issue is this property that is to the north of it. You have more area there, but a lot of that's also being used for water detention.
Sure.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Kays, I don't believe that there's any contradiction with that ordinance. This would be an action that would otherwise mark that property.
So you're saying that the action of the Board of Adjustment by designating this an okay thing would constitute the marking?
Well, I think technically, I think that the school is going to be the one that's going to be responsible for the marking because it's in their right of way. But this action, I would interpret this action as us falling into that exception of being otherwise marked by the city.
So the city, the action of the Board of Adjustment would be the denoting the marking of that for something other than parallel parking.
Correct.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I may, to further expand on that, what we would do through the city engineering office is execute a right-of-way agreement with the applicant that stipulates their responsibility for the striping and snow removal and things of that nature regarding these parking stalls, and execute that with the owner.
Does Lake Area Tech have any intention of expanding upon this parking further to the north, closer to the intersection at some point in time due to additional construction that may or may not occur in the future?
It's not something we discussed, and it's not something we'd probably recommend, at least not going any further to the north than the other off-street parking just on the west side of the road.
Would we allow this in any other residentially zoned area of the community where any other person would want to do something like this?
We have it almost every school already.
Significant difference on this location is those other two schools that have 80-foot right-of-ways along Millette and Roosevelt. This is only a 66-foot right-of-way.
Is there a reason that you didn't put a little bit of a slant to the parking to, the other side of the street is at a diagonal?
Mm-hmm.
Would it not serve better to be at an angle to see out, as you're reversing out?
I think the only reason why we didn't do it on a diagonal is because the existing parking straight to the south of the proposed 25 stalls is all perpendicular parking. So we were just trying to stay consistent with that design on that side of the street. But there isn't any reason why we couldn't if that was a requirement.
As an architect, is this something that you encourage with other campus-type designs, peripheral parking, parallel or diagonal on the periphery of a campus? I did take a look at some Google Earth pictures of SDSU and USD, and there's none of that around any one of their major campuses. So I'm just curious if that's something that you would encourage.
I guess it would depend on the circumstances. I think that this particular project is a little more unique than some other college campuses. And there are some constraints with the amount of land that's available for parking. So, as far as adding more parking, this seems like a suitable design for it.
If those parking places were angled, what would the net change in number of spaces be?
I haven't explored that, but I'm assuming we'd probably lose one out of every 10 spaces.
I was going to say probably 3 you'd probably lose out of the deal.
Is there any engineering standards as far as a safety aspect or concern there?
In regards to whether it's 90 degree or 45 or 60 degree,
Yeah.
there are engineering standards in relation to off-street parking where there's a minimum backing aisle requirement depending on the degree of perpendicular parking. In this case, there's obviously plenty of backing aisle width because you have this whole street to work with. But there are otherwise backing aisle requirements and minimum widths of those backing aisles that we would administer if this were on-site and you did not have the street to work with. So from that perspective, there's not an issue with a backing aisle width not being met.
Is the 15-mile-an-hour speed limit a year-round speed limit on that street?
This is just an educated guess, but I believe that comes down during the summer. I believe all school zones come down during the summer, at least. Is that correct? Okay. Yeah, 8 to 5 during the school year.
So when we added the parking across the street there and we did the angled, I'm just wondering if there was, a reason that we chose to go with the angled parking versus the 90 degree. I think the original lake area parking there with the 90 degree predates the angled parking across the street. I do agree that I think there is a good safety factor to doing the angled parking, especially on a road that sees a substantial amount of traffic as this one does.
I guess I'm trying to just at least ask questions that have a basis in the city's comprehensive land use plan. In the existing comprehensive land use plan, specifically in the transportation goal section, it states that we should be investigating diagonal parking policies in various areas of the community and develop new policies if necessary. Further, we are to investigate existing situations and develop policy regarding parking on major and minor collector streets. 11th Street is a minor collector street identified in the major street plan. And along our schools area in the section of the comp plan, it says, along with housing issues, Lake Area Tech, Watertown Public Schools, and the city will need to work together in addressing possible future shortcomings concerning parking and traffic congestion around the LATI and public school grounds. So I'm just wondering if by executing this concept, is this what our future policy is going to be around Lake Area Tech? So if subsequent requests to come in and put in diagonal or perpendicular parking around the perimeter, we would say yes to in every circumstance.
Yeah, and I think additionally to that, we've been talking about campus zoning districts as well. And so if we do get down that path, we need to take into consideration what we're doing in regards to landscaping standards and parking standards. Absolutely.
I just look at this as we know and we hope that Lake Area Tech continues to grow and build and expand. And we do know that parking will be a particular issue with this campus and any other public campus, school campus, hospitals, clinics down the road. And so we just need to be cognizant of what we're doing. Do we have, from an engineering standpoint, any concern with a 10-car stacking distance from that intersection?
That was contemplated as well in the review of this, Mr. Chairman, and Commissioner Kays. The approximate distance there from the intersection with 3rd Avenue is about 250 feet. I feel that's more than adequate in these circumstances to allow for that parking. As a comparison, I use our minimum offsets for driveways in these instances. And on a minor collector, I think we allow up to 50 feet offset from an intersection for a driveway. We obviously have well over 50 feet, and this is obviously different than a driveway. It's a run of parking stalls, but I was using that as kind of a check off anyway. And so in comparison with that, and just from a traffic management standpoint, I don't see that being a huge concern with the proposal, having that 250-foot distance from the intersection.
Thank you.
It would look to me like if we're concerned about losing spots, that we could go to the north a little bit further to accommodate those 3 or 4 spots we would lose by going diagonal. I guess I think that it would, diagonal to me is, maybe it's just because I'm short, is easier to back out of than straight. But, so my suggestion, instead of losing those 4 spots, would just be, because it looks like it's almost, it would almost line up with the entrance into the school, then you still would have enough room before you'd be backing into that entrance. And that's always been a one-way in to that parking lot, I believe, so.
My biggest concern, again, is backing out onto a minor collector where that road from 320 to 345 is very, very busy 9 months out of the year.
Yeah, I don't have a problem at this distance, but I am hesitant to go any farther north towards that intersection.
But this will be VOTEC parking lot that will be monitored. So, those students aren't out necessarily at 3:30, I don't think. You know what I'm saying? They monitor those parking lots and they have to have their stickers. So those parking lots aren't going to be emptied at the same time as the high school students are, in my opinion.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
One more comment in regards to the diagonal versus 90-degree. From an engineering standpoint, obviously the diagonal does provide a safety component. One of them that hasn't been mentioned is you would eliminate the ability from the southbound traffic of crossing the lane to park into the 90-degree stall. When you have diagonal for the northbound traffic, would only be the only traffic being able to utilize the parking would be the northbound traffic. So you do eliminate some conflict points on the roadway by going diagonal. You also have all the other safety components of the ease of backing out into that driving lane with the diagonal parking. So I thought I'd point that out as well, how you eliminate some of those traffic conflicts.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's a valid point.
Going to get people crossing a left-hand turn to park across. Did you look at all in your design as an alternate, where if we were to only access the parking from the south, that you could make a loop drive across the front of that area where I would enter in from the southeast corner and I would exit out the northwest corner of that area and still be able to parallel park with a driving lane in between 15 to 20 cars. Did you look at that as an option?
No, we did not.
I think there again, you'd take away some of your green space and aesthetic appeal of the.
Yeah, the green space isn't problematic for me. It's the consistency of parking in
One of
that
the
fashion.
one of the main reasons we didn't even consider that is just the existing grades from the building to the street.
And that's sufficient enough
Yeah.
answer for me. Thank you.
Thanks.
Any additional questions from the board? Is there anybody else in the public that would like to speak? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Look for board action.
I think at the very least we should have the parking be angled so that it is just right in, and we reduce those conflict points. If that's the route the board decides to go of approving this.
It'd be my preference to have angled parking places if we're gonna allow it.
Yeah, we ready for a motion? Because I would make the motion
I would entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion to approve,
I'm gonna
but
recuse myself.
but with angled parking spots.
I have a motion on the table to approve it as presented with the exception that the parking places are angled. I have a second.
And what about adding a little bit going further in order to accommodate those three other spots, 3 or 4 spots that we lose, but staying, in line with that entrance? Because right now it doesn't, they're stopping short of that quite a ways. We're gonna lose some spots, so in order to,
The only thing with that idea, you're going to design on the other side of that sidewalk if you
I
extend
think
it
the
over.
sidewalk's gone
Is that
anyway.
going to be gone?
Can we flip to one of the design sheets?
Does the sidewalk go away?
Yep.
Yep.
So I might just move your mouse here a minute if you don't mind. So as you can see, the parking on the opposite side of the street ends right where the
You'd be
hand is.
extending it further north than what it is on the west side of the street?
We would not.
Would be in line with that?
Yep.
So you'd want to keep it as far as you are now, no matter if you lose some spots?
Yeah.
You're
and
fine with that?
I'm fine with it. I
Okay.
think we could probably, if we could probably add another 10 to 12 feet to it to the north, just to get it to line up, and we could probably gain a spot or two back that way. So we'd probably be looking at about maybe 24 spots. Would there be a requirement as far as the angle of the parking, where we just match that to the opposite side?
Face north.
I would leave that to staff to follow the engineering standards.
Okay.
As far as, well, the engineering standards says it has to be, it says, space between cars shall not be less than 1 foot, and all cars still parked shall be parked within 6 inches of the curb line. 1904-03.
Mr. Chairman, we can also reference the engineering design standards that we do have on record and other standardized parking information that from AASHTO or other references like that to work with the applicant on an appropriate angle for this scenario.
You might just want to state acceptable to the engineering.
Yeah, like I said, I just want them angled to reduce the turning conflict across the lane, whether they park at 40 degrees, 45 degrees, or 60 degrees. Either way, they won't be able to do a turning across from the southbound lane, so either way would be fine with me, as long as it's acceptable with the engineering staff.
Did we need to append your motion in regards to the amount?
Well, does that include allowing the addition of?
To the north, the extension of the,
I think the applicant said that they would go no further north than what's across the street to the west.
Correct.
okay. I just want to make sure that we're all aligned there. So we have a motion and a second.
I just going to make one comment, Mr. Chair.
sir.
I will be voting in favor of this request as amended, with the caveat that I think before we have subsequent requests regarding parking in the public right-of-way, other than parallel parking across the curb, we need to be having some sort of established policy for campus-type development. This is a willy-nilly hodgepodge approach to it, and I think it's short-sighted.
Yeah, I agree. We have the comprehensive land use plan that we're wrapping up at this time, and Campus District is one of those districts that we need to finalize. Any additional comments from the board? I'll ask for a roll call.
Brink,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Stein,
Yes.
Dolly,
Yes.
Targets Johnson.
Yes.
We have a passing vote.
You didn't ask me.
Oh, I didn't, Kays.
Here,
Think about it now. Yes.
Still have a passing vote.
Thank you, Joe. Item 3 on the agenda is open public comment period. If there's anybody in the audience that would like to come up and speak on something that wasn't already talked about, go ahead and approach the microphone. Seeing none, I'll move on to old business. Any old business? Take a motion to adjourn. Motion by Stein, second by Dargis Johnson. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you.